Hey there. In this video, I want to cover two things. The first is I'd like to get you thinking differently about words and phrases and concepts, especially those that you have just accepted as true, or you've accepted the definition that others have told you that those words and concepts mean, and instead to question your use of them by exploring the assumptions that might be underneath them. And then the second thing I'd like to do is inspire you to be available to what is trying to emerge from you during these chaotic times. And to do that, we need to move out of scarcity and more towards curiosity, and to also develop a new skill, which is to notice what you don't really notice usually. So, okay, I'll start with a story. So, this is probably about 12 years ago, and my former husband and I are at Oktoberfest and we're having fun. We're having a beer, but you know me, I'm a depth nerd. So, we're talking about what at the time was described as an epidemic of overprescribing Prozac. I think there are a lot of dystopian movies that were sort of based on this sort of, the population is being drugged to not feel and to be relaxed. And anyway, so we're talking about it, and I'm concerned about it, of course. And my former husband says, well, it's good for the economy. And I was like, what's good for the economy? And he meant like the sales of this drug, this overprescribed drug. And I just was so taken aback. And I said, uh, well, but what is the economy for? And to what end? And what is the economy? And what is the purpose of the economy? So I wanted to ask all these questions, but he was like, no, let's just drink our beer. So anyway, that was the end of that. But it just struck me that, we accept this notion of economy. And today, of course, more people are pushing back on the idea that how we measure the economy doesn't always equate to, for example, that it benefits everyone. It benefits more people than others. So that's my story. So more than a decade later, now here we are. And it's chaotic. And there are a lot of times, a lot of things that are being dismantled. There's a lot of questioning. There's a lot of unveiling. There's a lot of being things that are being exposed. And so I think deconstructing these words and these terms and the things that we've accepted is a good thing to do right now, because there is something happening. And as things are falling apart, there is something that's trying to emerge. So I think it was about last year, about a year ago, when I started to become really preoccupied with words and phrases now. That was just like a little taste all those years ago. And I'm just scrolling on Blue Sky, and suddenly the term earn a living popped out at me. And I asked the question, like, what is this thing, this assumption that we must earn a living? What does that mean? We have to learn, we have to earn the right to exist. Like, that just seems effed up, basically. And I had a really dramatic and negative reaction to it that felt really disproportionate, but it just kind of stayed in my unconscious. And since then, though, I've become really preoccupied with words. So, for example, in working with my clients, they might say, I have anxiety, or they might label somebody as a narcissist. And I'll ask them, is that really true? What do you mean by that? And often they've adopted somebody else's definition of their state, of their energetic state. And often it's really not the right term. And from a depth psychology perspective, of course, symptoms like anxiety and depression are a way our unconscious is getting us to explore something. And out in society, of course, our healthcare system wants to, sell you a drug to sort of numb you to what is the deeper thing that's trying to happen. So my clients and I are exploring words these days. And also, like, even the whole DSM, that manual that therapists use to find like what's wrong with you, it's gotten to the point where even therapists are very concerned that simply, number one, being human is a disorder. And number two, the reason that we feel these things isn't because we're doing anything wrong. It's really because we're living in systems that are sick, systems that are harming us. So, And also, yes, so now some things are not considered disorders like Asperger's. It's just kind of like a personality type or characterization. So I think this is the time to deconstruct for yourself these things that you've taken for granted and that you've accepted as your limitations. So that gets me to my current words that I'm preoccupied with. And this really builds on this notion of what if we didn't have to earn the right to live? So I think it was yesterday, I was at the beach and this has kind of been brewing in my unconscious, I think, but I just was like, okay, what is happening here? And you know how there's a lot of videos of, it's mostly men, but people sharing how they're working out. Like they really want to prove that they're like, I don't know what it is. Like I work out 4 days a week, but I don't post videos about it. So I'm trying to figure out like what's beneath the surface here. So it's not to judge the person, but also there are these also posts that have been irritating me and they have to do with like hard work as if, you need to prove something by your hard work. And there's a difference, of course, in working hard toward the pursuit of something, the pursuit of excellence, for example, or the mastery of a skill. And there's a certain pride in that. But it's almost like suffering is glorified or it's become sacred. We need to suffer. So, what is up with that? Why do we believe that? And who has sold us this story that suffering makes us more worthy? So anyway, then I just started exploring like why am I mad about this? And usually when I'm mad about something, yes, it's maybe tied to something in my unconscious, but often it's to get me to be alert to something else that I can share with my clients, or I can just share my thoughts and help other people connect dots and relate to this in their own lives. So, what if we've absorbed this idea that effort and hard work are tied to our sense of worth? And who gets to say, right? Like how hard you work equals how much worth or how much result and how much value. And things are really skewed these days. And I think this is something that we have to ponder for ourselves and come to our own conclusions about what worth means to us. So to dig a little deeper, I said I wanted to get you thinking about, how can you be available for the new thing, the new systems, the new thoughts, the new paradigms about things that want to emerge, and they want to emerge through you. They want to emerge through your insights, through your new opinions, through your new judgments about things, and then how you bring that out to the world for others. So for me, how do I do this? How do I be available for what wants to emerge from me, which is like videos like this? And it starts with a disproportionate emotional reaction to something that then I explore, I journal, and then I get this insight. And then I'm like, oh, but what does this have to do with the collective? And so just digging into a little bit more about like, why is this idea of hard work equaling value? Why is it so powerful? Because it's really just a way more powerful forces keep us in check. And, other people are defining this. And I think this is an opportunity as things are falling apart where we get to define this for ourselves. So, for example, like here are a couple questions. Why do we have to earn time off? Why do we have to earn relaxation instead of seeing relaxation is actually contributes to our sense of creativity and our sense of actually being more productive when we relax? Or why is growth only measured in quantity versus the quality of, let's say, a relationship between two people? Or here's a good one. Why should the purpose of technology be to make us more productive? And who gets to decide what is productive? In today's economy, productivity is really directly just correlates with profits for investors as opposed to how are we benefiting when wages aren't really keeping up with even productivity gains? So, why isn't the purpose of technology to alleviate human suffering when it could? Or why is the value of something measured by consumer demand? For example, consumers' willingness to pay $500 to go to a concert versus, why isn't the value of teachers, for example? So why is consumer demand the measure of something of value rather than what is the purpose of teaching, right? To educate citizens who then become, productive and can contribute to, the collective. And who has made these determinations? We kind of know that, but why have we followed them without question? Why is it that we feel that we can't challenge them? And that's really key. It's the sense of fear that's driving us. So you could say that the dominant systems define results as production and growth. And why is growth always more as opposed to like depth and quality? Revenue and measurable output, sales, for example. But how would you define results? How do you define results in your family, right? Grades for a class or the excitement your son or daughter has for a topic, the topic of history, for example. How do you define a result when it comes to the quality of your relationship? Is it being married for 50 years, even though you don't like each other? Or is it mutual respect and, I don't know, and expansion of your consciousness? So I'm just trying to get you to really deconstruct, your acceptance of what words and concepts and systems mean, and then to be open to the fact that they want to be changed and they want to be upgraded, and that you're a participant in that process. So, so I was thinking about a story that touches on this theme of convention and other people defining things for us and sort of, being propelled by a sense of survival to pay our bills, fear of being accepted, success, other people's definitions of success, versus being available in the moment for what is trying to come through you, even though you don't really know what it might be. And that causes its own kind of anxiety. So I have a story, of course. So when I was 34, I had what I thought was going to be my dream job. And I thought, I'm retiring here, man. Like it was a topic, it was a nonprofit, and it was for a cause that I felt, just really passionate about. Literally, I thought this was going to be my forever job. And really, like within 2 weeks, I felt like, I don't know why they hired me. Like, I don't think they particularly like me. And the community thought I was doing a great job. But the people that I worked for, the boards, they just, I don't know, they just weren't happy with me. Now, at the time, though, I thought there was something wrong with me. So I thought, well, I need to do better. I need to figure this out. And eventually, my body, just the stress was taking its toll, and I couldn't handle it anymore. And so when I was brave enough to confront it, they just fired me. And that was devastating to me. And 3 weeks later, I felt a lot better about it. But at the time, I mean, I was just shocked that that's the way that they handled it. But in hindsight, what I learned was that it wasn't that I failed, it was that I wasn't a match, and that structure was too constraining for who I am. And this is a theme, which is why I have to be an entrepreneur. This is a theme when I go into organizations that at first I'm really embraced, but then once I start being me, it doesn't fit sometimes. So anyway, so it was devastating, and my family needed my income. And so it was stressful. And I took my kids out of private preschool, and I couldn't get an interview to save my job. So I tried so hard to just replace that job with another sort of conventional job, and I just couldn't. But then what was interesting is I ran into somebody and he happened to be running for mayor. And I was like, oh, I wish I could volunteer, but I can't. I got to find a job. And he hired me to work on his campaign. I was like, okay, even though I hadn't done that before. And then that lasted for 3 months. And then, boom, out of nowhere, a consultant called me and said, hey, I need some help with this project for a nonprofit. I had never done that before. Do you want to help me? And I said, yeah, are you kidding me? And that was like $4,000 for me. And so I didn't really know where things were going, but I just started then. I got some confidence and I started reaching out saying, hey, do you need some help? Do you need some help with somebody to nonprofits? And over time, I listened and learned. And then something started emerging. And within 6 months, I knew this is what I was meant to do. I was meant to not only work for nonprofits, but my point is, I didn't really have a thing that I went out there to offer. I didn't know what I was going to do. In fact, many of my initial projects with nonprofits were like, I don't know, I'll just figure out how to do this. I just knew that I could figure it out, but I knew that I was in the right place. And so my point is that I got fired and I needed that to kind of kick me in the butt. And then I couldn't get another job. So it was like, it was a clue. I could have really felt even more like a failure. But instead, I was just available and I followed some breadcrumbs. I mean, that campaign job was only 3 months, but I didn't worry about what was going to come after. I just was present as I was doing it. And so, within 2 years, I maxed out the work I could do on my own, and I started hiring people, and that's the story of Alinea. But the point is that I didn't fail in that job. It's just that that job was depleting me, and I was trying to fit into something that wasn't for me. So back to hard work though, because the point is not that we don't want to work hard. It's like, what is the state that the hard work is motivated from? So, is it a state of scarcity and fear? Is it a state that I have to prove something? Is it the state of I need to prove that I can do it, not for me, not to just do it from the thrill of doing it, but because I need to prove something to somebody, even if it's myself. So I worked very hard, but I went from working hard in an organization that was depleting me to working from a place where I was connecting something deep inside, something purpose driven with and this is where sort of being available and participating in, I was putting myself out there, and that connected with the people who needed what I had to offer, if you know what I'm saying. So it's like the difference between working from a state of fear and scarcity to um, responsiveness, I guess. It's like you're being invited. So it's kind of like this dance. It's not like you sit on the couch and you wait for something to come. It's that you're available without knowing or needing to know exactly where it's going to lead. So, the deeper thing that I'm asking you to explore then is between asking yourself, what should I do? What do I have to do? Versus what is being presented to me and what wants me, what wants my participation. But in order to do that, you have to be in a state of more curiosity and not fear. And so I have another little story because your body and your emotions will offer you clues for how to figure out what is it that I'm trying to be available for. So I recently went to a meeting, and it was a meeting for a nonprofit organization, and it was related to sort of reporting out on what they were accomplishing, but also it was an investment meeting. So the first part of the meeting, I was very inspired because I love the mission of this organization. And part of its mission really is to do something to enhance opportunity for economic mobility in the community, which I love. Now, as I was listening to the report from the invest advisors from the investment company, I started to get so angry and hot and agitated. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is happening to me? I was so angry. Now, in the moment, I actually knew that my anger had to do with this conversation about investments that that was so like not aligned with actually the mission of the organization. So, what was being presented was this incoherence between here is the mission of the organization to impact the economy for people who are being left out. And yet at the same time, the investment portfolio, the dollars are invested in companies who actually are undermining that mission. And so I just thought, am I the only one who's seeing this disconnect? And so again, I thought, okay, what, what is the deeper meaning of my anger about this? And then again, so it is this bigger thing about encouraging people to tune into what is not aligned inside yourself, what is not aligned between what's in you and your job or in you in a relationship, and what is not aligned in our society. And that, how we have been made to feel responsible for our own mental health problems when really it's the systems that we're being forced to live in. And how do we participate in what is trying to emerge to replace those symptoms? So, a question that you could um, think about is well, first of all, is new ideas and what's trying to emerge from you, that comes from the unconscious and the imagination. And so, for example, you might not know this, but Einstein, his theory of relativity was not something that he wrote from his mind. It was presented to him complete in a dream. So, this is the work I do with my clients. So, of course, if you're interested in learning more, you can schedule an exploratory chat. But there's a whole other language that helps you be more tuned into this sort of what is trying to emerge from you. But, here's a question like, what might your life look like if you weren't living it in a way that was organized around work as a way of, surviving versus work as a way of, you know, um, allowing you to connect what's deep inside you with contributing to the world or your family or the collective. What would we create? What would our relationships be like? How would we spend time with our children on the weekend? What would become possible? So, and in the 70s, there were actually a lot of papers written about how we could have different systems because we saw technology coming. And there were papers written about, wow, technology is going to free up human innovation and ingenuity and creativity. And we're going to work less and we're going to be more creative. And of course, it didn't happen that way then. But this is what is being asked of us now, that this is where, this is the new paradigm, but only if we participate in it happening. So, knowing that, what happens when you ask, what's trying to come through me instead of what do I need to produce? And, those could be good journaling questions for you. So I think in a future video, I'll offer ideas on how you can create the conditions in your life where you can see how this is actually happening in your life. And, maybe the ultimate question then for you isn't, what did I produce at work this week? And instead it could be like, what became possible because I was here and I lived here. So, back to working hard. So I didn't find my path by working harder at fitting into other people's ideas about what was valuable and what results were worthy. Instead, I had to be kicked out of a structure, of course. I didn't choose that I had to be forced. But then I did start paying attention to, when I was inspired. And I guess I took risks. I took psychological risks, but the risks weren't irresponsible. I just said yes to things, even though I didn't know where they were ultimately going to lead. And then I ended up doing really deeply meaningful work. So I know this has felt kind of meandering, but again, circling back, I wanted to get you, to be curious about other words and phrases that you have accepted that maybe once you explore the assumptions beneath them, the assumptions about human nature and what's right and wrong and what is valuable and worthy and that sort of thing, that you then can be maybe dismantle some of your own limiting beliefs that you're not conscious of. And once you do that, you show up in the world in a different way, and then you give other people permission to do the same. And then that's how we build better systems that unleash us and our human potential. So until next time, but also for more information and to dig into, learning the language of your unconscious or to explore this for you in a setting where you have me as a guide, just go to my website, deborahlukovich.com. I've got a YouTube channel with more videos with thoughts like this and blog posts. And of course, I have my memoir and all of that. So until next time, take care.